The Galactic Sun Trial was a test unlike anything humanity had ever witnessed. It was a grand spectacle orchestrated by the Galactic Council to determine the resilience and worthiness of species across the galaxy. Billions of beings from countless worlds tuned in to watch as the trial began, their eyes fixed on the colossal arena orbiting a volatile, white-hot star. The Council had designed this test to be merciless, subjecting participants to levels of solar radiation no creature should survive. Humanity was a last-minute addition to the trial, invited as an afterthought. To the Council, humans were primitive, barely capable of interstellar travel, and certainly unfit for the galactic stage. The other species scoffed at their inclusion, considering it nothing more than a formality before their inevitable annihilation. Fragile creatures, the Zovarks had mocked, their reptilian faces twisting into sneers. They won't last a single pulse of the star's fury. As the trial commenced, the arena's energy shields lowered, exposing the participants to the star's raw power. Radiation levels spiked immediately, bathing the arena in blinding light. The first to fall were the Thrixians, their crystalline bodies shattering under the relentless heat. Next, the Marves collapsed, their water-based physiology evaporating into nothingness. One by one, species began to falter, their screams of agony echoing across the galaxy. But then, the cameras turned to humanity. Standing amidst the chaos, the humans were fine. Not just fine, they were thriving. While others writhed in pain, the humans seemed almost energized, their skin absorbing the sunlight like plants in bloom. Commander Elena Vargas, leader of the human contingent, even smiled as she adjusted her visor, shielding her eyes from the glare. The Galactic Council watched in stunned silence as the humans stood unscathed, their resilience defying all logic. "How is this possible?" one of the council members whispered, his voice trembling. The Zovarks were livid. Their leader, General Xarn, slammed his clawed hand onto the table. "This is a trick. No species can endure such intensity without technological augmentation." But there were no tricks. The humans wore no special suits, carried no advanced shielding. They simply endured. As the trial progressed, the other participants dropped out or perished, leaving only humanity standing. The Council's announcers, who had initially dismissed the humans as weaklings, struggled to find the words to describe what was happening. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are witnessing something unprecedented," one commentator stammered. "Humanity has survived the Galactic Sun Trial." In the aftermath of the trial, the Council summoned the human delegation for an explanation. Elena Vargas stood before the assembly, her calm demeanor masking the whirlwind of thoughts racing through her mind. "Our species has always adapted to adversity," she began, her voice steady. "Our planet, Earth, is bathed in sunlight. We've evolved to thrive under its rays. What you saw today wasn't a trick or a miracle. It's just who we are." The room erupted into murmurs. Some species were in awe, others in disbelief. The Zovarks, however, remained silent, their predatory eyes narrowing as they observed Vargas. To them, humanity's resilience was not a marvel but a threat. As the council session adjourned, Sarn gathered his advisors. "These humans," he growled, his voice dripping with malice, "are more dangerous than we thought. If they can withstand the sun, what else might they be capable of? We cannot allow them to rise unchecked." Far from the prying eyes of the council, the Zovarks began plotting. To them, the Galactic Sun Trial had not just revealed humanity's strength, it had marked them as a target. And in the shadows of the galaxy, a plan was set in motion, one that would test humanity's resilience like never before. For the humans, the trial was a victory, a moment of pride. But for the galaxy, it was the beginning of something far greater, a ripple that would soon become a tidal wave. Unbeknownst to them, humanity's unyielding spirit had ignited a fire, one that would burn across the stars, challenging everything the galaxy thought it knew about strength, survival, and what it truly meant to be invincible. The quiet following humanity's victory in the Galactic Sun Trial was short-lived. While many species in the galaxy celebrated the surprising resilience of the humans, whispers of discontent and jealousy began to spread. In dimly lit chambers on far-flung planets, murmurs of alien resentment turned into plans for action. For the Zovarks, humiliation burned deeper than the heat of the trial star. General Xarn watched the recordings of the trial on an enormous holoscreen in his war chamber. Every detail of the humans' calm demeanor, their defiance against the sun's fury, replayed over and over, fueling his anger. "They have no technology superior to ours," Xarn snarled, his sharp claws scraping against the polished metal table. "They're untested, reckless beings who just got lucky. This display of theirs is nothing but a fluke." But his advisors were less convinced. One of them, a slender Zovark with a cybernetic eye, hesitated before speaking. "General, if they truly evolved to withstand such extremes, imagine what else they might be hiding. Their resilience is unnatural. We should act before their confidence grows." Xarn nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on the image of Commander Elena Vargas, standing unshaken in the trial. "Then we strike before they realize their strength. Let's see how resilient they are when the stars themselves turn against them." Unbeknownst to humanity, the Zovarks had already begun marshaling their forces. Their warships were infamous across the galaxy. Sleek, black vessels equipped with solar disruptors capable of manipulating the energy of nearby stars. It was a devastating weapon that had brought countless civilizations to their knees, and Xarn was determined to make Earth its next victim. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the atmosphere was far different. News of humanity's triumph in the galactic sun trial spread like wildfire. People celebrated across the globe, proud of their species for proving the galaxy wrong. On every screen, Commander Vargas became a symbol of hope and strength. For the first time, humanity felt it could truly belong in the wider galaxy. In a quiet corner of Earth's lunar base, Vargas stood with her team, reviewing transmissions from the Galactic Council. Although she wore a confident smile during the trial, her mind now raced with questions. Why had the Council invited humanity to such a dangerous test in the first place? Was it truly a gesture of inclusion, or something more sinister? Her second-in-command, Captain Renaldrin, leaned against the console beside her. "The Council seems almost too eager to praise us," he said, frowning. "It doesn't sit right with me. They were ready to dismiss us, but now they're calling us an example of galactic strength. What changed?" Before Vargas could respond, a sharp alarm echoed through the base. Red lights flashed as the comms officer shouted, "Commander, incoming transmission. Priority 1. The hologram that materialized was from an anonymous source. The shadowy figure spoke in a hurried tone, their voice distorted. "Humans, you are in grave danger. The Zovarks are planning to strike. They see your survival as a threat to their dominance, and will stop at nothing to crush you. Their fleet is en route to your solar system, and their weaponry is designed to harness and weaponize your own sun against you." The room fell silent as the transmission ended abruptly. Vargas clenched her fists, her jaw tightening. The celebration on Earth now felt like a distant memory, replaced by the cold reality of an imminent attack. "Contact the United Earth Defense Command," Vargas ordered, her voice steady but firm. "We need to mobilize immediately. If what they said is true, this won't just be a battle. It'll be a war for survival." As Earth's leaders gathered to discuss their response, the Zovark fleet entered the outer reaches of the solar system, their ships cloaked in darkness. Xarn stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the distant light of the human sun. "Soon," he said, his voice low and menacing, "they will understand the price of challenging the Zovarks. Their precious star will become their undoing." The first signs of the attack came swiftly. Earth's observatories detected strange energy fluctuations near the sun, patterns that couldn't be natural. Satellites monitoring solar activity picked up sudden bursts of radiation aimed directly at Earth. The Zovarks were using their solar disruptors to destabilize the star, causing massive solar flares to lash out at the planet. In a desperate bid to protect their world, humanity activated its orbital defenses. Massive shields were deployed to absorb the radiation, and fleets of starships took to the skies, ready to confront the invaders. Yet even as humanity braced for the fight, doubts lingered. The Zovarks were a species with centuries of interstellar warfare experience. How could Earth's relatively young defenses hold up against such overwhelming force? Vargas knew that conventional tactics wouldn't be enough. As she stood aboard the command ship Eclipse, overlooking the battle preparations, she addressed her crew. "We've been underestimated before, and we proved them wrong. This time is no different. They think they can turn the sun against us, but they don't understand who they're dealing with. Humanity doesn't just survive. We adapt, we fight, and we win." Cheers erupted across the deck, but the tension was palpable. Every soldier, scientist, and strategist knew the stakes. The Zovarks weren't just coming to defeat humanity. They were coming to erase it. As the first wave of Zovark ships emerged from the shadows, the battle began. Earth's forces met them head-on, their ships darting between the enemy's solar beams in a deadly dance. Explosions lit up the darkness of space, painting the void with flashes of light. But even as the battle raged, Vargas's mind worked tirelessly. She knew the only way to win was to turn the Zovark's own weapon against them. If humanity could harness the sun's power, not as a weapon of destruction, but as a source of strength, they might stand a chance. In the chaos of the battle, a plan began to take shape. It was bold, dangerous, and near impossible, but it was their only hope. The humans would fight with everything they had, not just for survival, but to show the galaxy what it truly meant to endure. The stillness of space shattered as the first wave of Zovark warships broke through the darkness. Their sleek black hulls reflected faint starlight, and their engines emitted an eerie low hum that seemed to vibrate through the void itself. Earth's orbital defense stations immediately sprang into action, their alarms blaring as fleets of human ships rose to meet the threat. Commander Elena Vargas stood on the bridge of the Eclipse, her eyes locked on the tactical display. The holographic map showed the incoming Zovark fleet in ominous red, a sea of moving danger encircling Earth. Her crew worked feverishly at their stations, voices sharp and focused as they relayed commands and data. "First contact in 90 seconds, Commander," reported Captain Ren Aldrin, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. Elena's fingers gripped the edge of the console as she leaned forward. "Send the signal to all ships. No one engages alone. We fight as one." The Zovarks struck first. Bright beams of energy erupted from their solar disruptors, slicing through space with terrifying precision. The beams slammed into Earth's orbital shields, causing massive ripples of energy to cascade across their surface. On the ground, people looked up at the sky in horror as faint flashes of light signaled the battle above. Human ships moved quickly to counter. The Eclipse led the charge, its weapon systems unleashing a barrage of plasma bolts that streaked toward the enemy. The Zovarks were fast, their ships weaving through the attacks with unnatural agility. But the humans were relentless, using formations and strategies designed to outmaneuver even the most advanced opponents. The battle was chaos. Explosions lit up the void as ships from both sides fell. A human fighter squadron darted between enemy cruisers, firing precisely at weak points. Meanwhile, Zovark drones swarmed the defenders, their smaller size and numbers overwhelming several human vessels. On the Eclipse, alarms blared as a Zovark destroyer turned its attention toward them. The ship fired a concentrated solar beam, aimed directly at the bridge. "Evasive maneuvers," Elena shouted, gripping the railing as the ship lurched to the side. The beam grazed the hull, leaving a molten scar, but sparing the ship from destruction. "Damage report." "Minor hull breach on Deck 4, Ren replied. "No casualties, but we've lost one of our forward plasma cannons." Elena nodded, her mind racing. "Target that destroyer's power core. Let's see how they handle their own weaponry." The Eclipse pivoted, its remaining cannons firing in unison. The plasma bolts struck the destroyer's core, triggering a massive explosion that sent shockwaves through the battlefield. A cheer erupted on the bridge, but Elena's expression remained grim. "For every one we take down, they send 5 more," she muttered. The Zovarks' true strategy soon became clear. While their fleet kept Earth's defenses occupied, smaller stealth ships broke away from the main battle. These ships carried ground invasion forces, aiming to breach Earth's surface and disable critical infrastructure. On the ground, the invasion began with sudden strikes on major cities. The Zovarks deployed advanced combat units, heavily armored soldiers armed with energy weapons that could melt through steel. They moved with precision, targeting communication hubs, power stations, and defense installations. In New York City, chaos erupted as Zovark troops descended from their ships. Civilians ran for cover, their screams filling the air as buildings crumbled under the invaders' assault. Earth's ground forces, though outgunned, rallied quickly. Soldiers armed with railguns and drones engaged the Zovarks, fighting to protect their home. Private Leila Moreno crouched behind a barricade, her hands shaking as she reloaded her weapon. Around her, fellow soldiers exchanged fire with the towering Zovark troops. Their energy shields absorbed most of the initial attacks, but concentrated fire eventually brought them down. "They just keep coming," one soldier yelled, his voice barely audible over the chaos. Leila gritted her teeth, raising her rifle. "Then we keep fighting." She fired a burst at an approaching Zovark, the bullets finding a gap in its armor. The alien fell with a mechanical screech, but another immediately took its place. Above the planet, the battle in space grew even more desperate. The Zovarks unleashed their next weapon, solar destabilizers. These devices were designed to amplify the sun's energy, creating massive solar flares directed toward Earth. "Commander, we've detected multiple destabilizers being deployed around the sun," Wren reported. "If they activate, the resulting solar flare will obliterate the orbital shields and everything on the surface." Elena's mind raced. If the destabilizers weren't stopped, Earth wouldn't survive the next hour. She turned to her crew, her voice firm. "Prepare a strike team. We're taking those destabilizers out." Aboard the Eclipse, a team of elite soldiers suited up, their expressions grim but determined. They knew the risks. Approaching the destabilizers meant flying dangerously close to the sun, where temperatures and radiation levels were deadly. But failure wasn't an option. As the strike team launched in specially shielded fighters, the rest of the human fleet continued to hold the Zovarks at bay. Elena watched from the bridge, her heart pounding. The outcome of the mission would determine the fate of humanity. The fighters approached the first destabilizer, a massive structure orbiting perilously close to the sun. Its surface bristled with automated defenses, firing relentlessly at the incoming ships. "Stay in formation," the team leader barked. "Target those turrets first." The fighters weaved through the onslaught, their weapons blazing. Explosions dotted the destabilizer's surface as turrets were destroyed one by one. But the closer they got, the more intense the heat and radiation became. "Shields at critical levels," one pilot reported, his voice strained. "Keep going," the leader replied. "We have to finish this." As the team closed in, they deployed specialized charges designed to overload the destabilizer's core. The devices latched onto the structure, their timers ticking down. "Charges are set," the leader called out. "Get clear." The fighters peeled away just as the destabilizer erupted in a blinding explosion. The shockwave rippled outward, briefly illuminating the dark expanse of space. Back on the Eclipse, cheers erupted as the first destabilizer was destroyed. But Elena knew there were still more to go, and time was running out. "Prepare for the next target," she ordered. "We're not done yet." As the battle raged on, the resilience and determination of humanity shone brighter than ever. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing an enemy with centuries of experience. But they refused to back down. For every life lost, for every sacrifice made, they'd fought harder. The Zovarks had underestimated them once again, and they would pay the price. The victory against the Zovark command ship was short-lived. While the destruction of their flagship had thrown the invaders into disarray, it hadn't ended the war. What remained of the Zovark fleet regrouped quickly, driven by desperation and fury. Their reinforcements, summoned from deep space, were now mere hours away. The surviving human forces, battered but defiant, prepared for one last stand. Keep them guessing. Sung Ho commanded as he sent his flagship into a spiral that no sane captain would attempt. Don't let them think. Don't let them predict. The turning point came when a small group of ships performed a maneuver that violated several laws of physics thanks to some creative use of their drive systems. The Harbinger shadows, unable to process what they were seeing, briefly became solid as their prediction systems failed. In that moment of confusion, the Human Federation force struck. Weapons fire from a dozen different directions converged on the solidified shadows. For the first time since they had appeared, the Harbingers took damage. The shadows retreated, leaving behind the first Federation victory against them. The cost had been high. Several ships were damaged or destroyed by their own reckless maneuvers, but they had proven that the Harbingers could be fought. In the aftermath, Captain Sung Ho addressed the Federation Council via holographic link. His ship showed battle damage, and his uniform was torn, but his eyes shone with fierce pride. The key isn't technology, he explained to the assembled leaders. It's the willingness to embrace chaos. The Harbingers feed on order and prediction. We beat them by becoming something they couldn't predict. Commander Minna stood beside him, adding, "This is just the beginning. We've shown them that we can hurt them. Now we need to teach everyone to fight this way." The council members, who had always valued order and logic above all else, struggled with this new paradigm, but they couldn't argue with success. For the first time since the Harbinger threat began, they had hope. As new training programs were established across Federation space, Minna's words became a battle cry for the combined forces. Embrace the chaos, become the unpredictable, and fear will become our weapon against them. General Jiwoo stood on the bridge of the flagship Thunderchild, a human vessel upgraded with Federation technology. The ship was a perfect blend of human unpredictability and alien advancement. Its clean Federation lines broken by seemingly random modifications that made it look almost incomplete. Around the Thunderchild, a fleet of similar hybrid vessels moved into attack formation. Each ship had been modified according to its human captain's instincts rather than any standard design, making every vessel unique and unpredictable. The fleet looked more like a gathering of space pirates than a military force, which was exactly what Jiwoo wanted. In his command center, Science Director Taiwan monitored the fleet's brainwave patterns. The combination of human and alien crews created neural signatures that seemed to flicker in and out of normal spacetime. His research team had discovered that this effect confused and disrupted Harbinger sensing systems. The human minds act like static in their perception, Taiwan explained to his staff. When we mix human and Federation crew members, the interference becomes even stronger. The Harbingers literally cannot predict where our ships will appear or what they will do next. The fleet entered Harbinger-controlled space, an area that had once been home to billions of Federation citizens. The shadows sensed their approach, gathering in their usual attack formations. But something was different this time. The shadows hesitated, their movements showing uncertainty for the first time. "They can't read us," Jiwoo announced to the fleet. "They don't know what we're going to do because we don't know what we're going to do. Trust your instincts. Act without thinking. Be human." The battle began with chaos. Ships jumped in and out of formation randomly, weapons fired in patterns that made no logical sense, and communication channels filled with a mix of human battle cries and alien languages. The Harbingers tried to adapt, to find patterns they could predict and counter, but the human-led forces refused to be predictable. On the science vessel, Ta-1 watched in amazement as his sensors showed the Harbinger shadows becoming increasingly unstable. Their very existence depends on being able to predict and manipulate reality, he reported to Jiwoo. The human chaos is disrupting their ability to maintain their form in our dimension. The breakthrough came when a young human gunner, acting purely on instinct, fired his weapons in a rhythm based on an old Earth song. The random pattern caused a section of shadow to solidify momentarily. Other gunners, catching on, began firing in equally unpredictable rhythms. More shadows began to lose their ethereal state. "This is it," Ji-woo broadcasted to the fleet. "Hit them with everything. No patterns, no logic, just pure human chaos." The hybrid fleet unleashed a barrage that defied physics itself. Federation technology, guided by human intuition, created weapon effects that shouldn't have been possible. Energy beams curved in impossible ways, torpedoes phased in and out of reality, and point defense systems created artistic patterns of destruction. The Harbingers began to retreat, but for the first time, their withdrawal wasn't orderly. The shadows scattered in different directions, showing clear signs of what could only be described as panic. They had encountered something they couldn't predict or control, and it terrified them. In the aftermath of the battle, Taiwan's research team made another crucial discovery. The human brainwave patterns weren't just disrupting Harbinger sensors, they were actually damaging the shadow being's ability to maintain their presence in normal space. Every human thought is unique, Taiwan explained to the Federation Council. Even when humans try to think the same thing twice, it comes out slightly different. The Harbingers, who feed on predictability and patterns, find this chaos poisonous to their very existence. General Ji-woo used this knowledge to plan larger offensives. Each new fleet would carry a higher percentage of human crew members, maximizing the disruptive effect on the Harbingers. The shadows began to retreat from system after system, unable to maintain their hold in areas with strong human presence. The Federation, which had always valued order and perfection, learned to embrace human chaos. Ships were modified to be intentionally asymmetrical, crew rotations were randomized, and battle plans were changed on whims rather than logic. "We're not just fighting the Harbingers," Ji-woo told his forces before each engagement. "We're showing them something they've never seen before, the beautiful chaos of human nature." As news of their successes spread, more Federation worlds volunteered to host human crews. The shadows continued to retreat, their once unstoppable advance now turned into a desperate withdrawal from the unpredictable force they had awakened. Taiwan's final report to the Council summarized what they had learned. The Harbingers are beings of pure order, feeding on the predictability of advanced civilizations. Humanity, with its embrace of chaos and unpredictability, is not just resistant to them. It is toxic to their very existence. We didn't just find an ally in humans, we found the natural predator of our greatest enemy. Dr. Hyun-suk stared at the test results displayed across multiple holographic screens in his laboratory. After months of studying the interaction between human consciousness and Harbinger energy patterns, his team had finally understood the true nature of their enemy, and why humans were their perfect counter. "Look at this," he said, pointing to a complex wave pattern. His research team, composed of both humans and Federation scientists, gathered around. "When a Harbinger tries to maintain its form in our dimension, it creates a perfect mathematical pattern. But when exposed to human brainwaves, these patterns become unstable. In a sealed chamber nearby, a captured fragment of Harbinger's shadow writhed in apparent distress. Every time a human researcher approached, the fragment's edges would blur and break down. Federation scientists, however, could approach without causing any reaction. Commander Yu-jin watched the experiments from an observation deck. Her mind was already racing with tactical possibilities. As a veteran of numerous battles against the Harbingers, she had seen firsthand how human presence affected them. Now she finally understood why. "They're not just aliens," Dr. Hyun-suk explained during an emergency council meeting. "The Harbingers are living mathematics, beings of pure order trying to impose their patterns on our reality. Humans, with our chaotic thought patterns and unpredictable nature, are like a virus in their perfect system." Commander Yu-jin stepped forward with a bold proposal. "We need to take this knowledge and turn it into a weapon. she said, bringing up a tactical display. A massive fleet action, but not like anything we've tried before. Small ships, each with a human crew, diving directly into Harbinger concentrations. The council chamber erupted in debate. The plan seemed suicidal. Sending ships directly into the densest Harbinger formations went against every military doctrine. But Yu Jin had data to support her strategy. The closer humans get to them, the more their presence disrupts the Harbinger's ability to maintain cohesion, she explained. If we can get enough human minds close enough to their central mass, we might be able to force them out of our dimension entirely. Dr. Hyun-suk's team worked around the clock to modify ships for the mission. They stripped away non-essential systems to make room for specialized equipment that would amplify human brainwave patterns. Each vessel became a projection of human chaos, designed to be as disruptive as possible to Harbinger physics. Training for the mission proved challenging. Federation pilots, used to precise formation flying, had to learn to let go of their structured thinking. Human pilots taught them to rely on instinct and emotion rather than calculated maneuvers. Don't try to find the perfect attack path, Yu Jin instructed during simulation runs. The moment you start thinking logically, you become predictable. Let your humanity guide you. The research continued to reveal more about their enemy. The Harbingers weren't just feeding on worlds. They were trying to impose their version of perfect order on the galaxy. Each consumed planet became part of their mathematical pattern, making their hold on our dimension stronger. They see our chaos as a flaw in reality, Dr. Hyun-suk explained. They're trying to fix the universe by making it conform to their patterns. Human consciousness, which thrives on chaos and creativity, is fundamentally incompatible with their vision. Commander Yu Jin's plan took shape as more ships were modified and crews trained. The fleet would split into small groups, each led by human pilots, and drive straight into the heart of Harbinger territory. The goal wasn't to destroy them through conventional warfare, but to disrupt their ability to exist in our space. We're not fighting them, she told her pilots. We're showing them that their perfect order cannot exist in a universe that includes humanity. Our chaos is our strength. The modified ships were unlike anything the Federation had ever built. Their designs incorporated random elements, their energy signatures pulsed with human brainwave patterns, and their very presence seemed to distort the space around them. Dr. Hyun-suk's final discovery came just days before the planned assault. He found that human emotions, particularly strong ones like fear or determination, created even more disruption in Harbinger patterns. This led to a last-minute modification in the plan. The pilots would be encouraged to embrace their emotions rather than maintain military discipline. Your feelings, your humanity, your chaos. These are your weapons, Yu Jin told her crews during the final briefing. When you face them, don't try to be soldiers. Be human, be unpredictable, be everything they fear. As the fleet prepared for what might be their final battle, Dr. Hyun-suk shared one last insight with Commander Yu Jin. The Harbingers aren't evil, he said quietly. They're just the opposite of what we are. Where they seek perfect order, we thrive in beautiful chaos. This isn't just a battle for survival. It's a clash between two fundamentally different ways of existing. Yu Jin looked out at her fleet, each ship now a carrier of human chaos ready to challenge the perfect order of the Harbingers. The plan was dangerous, perhaps even suicidal, but it was also perfectly human, unpredictable, emotional, and defying all logical analysis. In other words, exactly what they needed to win. The combined fleet hung in space above the Harbinger's dimensional anchor point, a swirling vortex of impossible mathematics where reality itself seemed to break down. Captain Yunho sat in the command chair of his ship defiant, watching as the final battle plan unfolded. Around him, hundreds of small ships crewed by humans and their Federation allies moved into position. Each vessel had been modified to amplify human brainwave patterns, turning them into weapons against the perfect order of the Harbingers. The shadows gathered, their dark forms twisting in ways that hurt the eyes to watch. They seemed to sense that this would be the decisive battle, concentrating their forces in numbers never seen before. The very fabric of space distorted around them as they prepared for what they thought would be their final victory. "Remember why we fight." Eonho's voice carried across all frequencies to the fleet, not just for Earth, not just for the Federation, but for the right of chaos to exist alongside order. The first wave launched, small ships diving directly into the Harbinger formations. Human pilots, their minds deliberately focused on their most chaotic thoughts, created ripples of destruction in the shadow beings' perfect patterns. Where human consciousness touched Harbinger mathematics, reality itself seemed to shudder. Federation sensors recorded everything as the battle unfolded. Each human-crewed ship acted as a point of chaos in the Harbinger's ordered universe. The shadows tried to adapt, to find patterns they could predict and counter, but human unpredictability proved impossible to overcome. Captain Eonho watched as the first phase of the attack succeeded, creating weaknesses in the Harbinger formations. The time had come for the final thrust, a suicide run directly into the dimensional anchor point. He knew his ship would not return, but its destruction would create the disruption needed to seal the Harbingers out of this reality forever. For Earth and the Federation. His words echoed across space as the Defiant plunged toward the vortex. Other ships followed, each crew knowing they were sacrificing themselves to save not just their own civilizations, but the very nature of chaos itself. The cost was devastating. Thousands of human lives were lost as ships deliberately flew into the heart of the Harbinger concentration. But each sacrifice created more disruption, more chaos in the perfect patterns the shadow beings needed to maintain their presence in this dimension. The dimensional anchor point began to collapse as human consciousness, amplified by Federation technology, tore apart the mathematical foundations of Harbinger existence. The shadows retreated, their ordered formations breaking down into random movements for the first time. In the aftermath, Federation scientists worked quickly to erect barriers using recorded patterns of human brainwaves. These walls of chaos would prevent the Harbingers from ever returning, maintaining a permanent disruption in the areas they once used to enter our dimension. Months later, in the rebuilt Federation assembly, Admiral Sunma stood before a monument that symbolized their victory. A simple earth tree, its branches growing in natural, unpredictable patterns, reached toward the artificial sky. The plaque at its base read, "To the human spirit. The light that banished our darkness." Her human second-in-command stood beside her, both of them contemplating how the galaxy had changed. The Federation, once dedicated to perfect order and predictability, had learned to value chaos and unpredictability. Human influence had spread throughout their civilization, teaching them that true strength came from embracing both order and chaos. "We thought we needed to become more advanced to defeat them," Sun Mai said, her translator conveying the emotion in her voice. "Instead, we needed to remember how to be unpredictable." The human officer nodded, touching the tree's bark. "Sometimes the most primitive response is the most effective one." The Harbingers never understood that chaos isn't a flaw in the universe. It's an essential part of it. Around them, the Federation continued to change. Ships now incorporated random elements in their design. Societies learned to value spontaneity alongside structure, and the rigid patterns of the past gave way to a new appreciation for unpredictability. The final casualty reports listed thousands of human names, each one honored as a hero who had given their life to save not just their own species, but all species that valued freedom over perfect order. Their sacrifice had taught the galaxy that true strength lay not in achieving perfection, but in embracing the beautiful chaos of existence. As new generations grew up learning this lesson, the galaxy entered a new era, one where order and chaos existed in balance, where the most advanced civilizations learned from the most primitive ones, and where the light of the human spirit continued to shine as a reminder that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe is the courage to be unpredictable. *The End*.